There's the outro. That's what we needed.
The X Cinema, LA's classiest X-rated movie house. This week, see the film everyone's talking about. Holly Does Hollywood, and does it well. Screw Magazine says Hollybody keeps this business where it belongs, in the gutter. In the words of Eros Magazine, the Gone with the Wind of adult films. Holly Does Hollywood in a hedonist heaven. Hustler Magazine gives it Hustler's highest rating. 10 nominations including Best Picture, Critics Adult Film Association. Starring Hollybody, Holly Does Hollywood. Now playing at the X Cinema, and for you home viewers, you can pick it up right now at Tower Records all-night video sale.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday, I'm Lewis.
And I'm Brandon.
And we are here to talk about movies. Each week, Brandon and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film, and that was 1984's Body Double, directed by Brian De Palma, starring Craig Wasson and Melanie Griffith. We do have a special guest with us today. We teased it at the end of last week, and that special guest is the one, the only, Zach. Hello, Zach. How are you?
Hi, Lewis and Brendan. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Welcome back, Zach.
Thank you. I noticed that the quote mentions Screw Magazine. The guy who founded Screw Magazine actually lived like in where I live now.
Oh, really?
For a few years, and he had a mansion with like a giant statue of a middle finger.
Nice. Yeah.
His name is
That's
Al
amazing.
Goldstein. I think it's been demolished, but I've seen the middle finger, so I drove by it in high school. So
How cool. That's
Little piece
awesome.
of cinema history.
piece
Yeah.
of Screw
want that.
Magazine history.
Yeah.
I want that middle finger, though. Where is it?
I believe
What'd
it got
they do with it?
I think it got demolished.
That's crazy.
Oh. Well, that's a shame.
I could be wrong about that, but I think they demolished his house.
They could have attached it to the Statue of Liberty.
They could have.
There we go.
It would be
Yeah.
a nice little headpiece.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having
and
me.
I'm very excited to talk about this movie with you. But
Same.
before we do, Brandon, let's talk a little bit about what are we going to talk about?
Movies.
Movies. There we
Yeah,
go.
so we're trying a new section out where we do quick reviews, and just kind of talk about what we've been watching this week.
Yeah.
I haven't been watching too much. I did watch Blowout in anticipation for watching Body Double because I know you watched Blowout before. You were
I
like,
did.
I should watch Body Double. So I kind of wanted to get on the same, Brian De Palma
Yeah.
experience with you.
Yeah.
But I've also been watching Five Came Back because you mentioned that in the last episode.
Are you enjoying it?
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I almost picked like a John Ford film for the movie we're going to watch next week,
Oh,
but
dang.
I think I'm going to save it for later.
Okay,
I
cool.
got something else for next week.
Sweet.
But I know all of us have seen Licorice Pizza, so we'll probably talk about that. What else have you been watching?
Yeah, so this week's been it's a little bit bare, honestly. I mean, me and my wife watched When Harry Met Sally, which is a personal favorite of ours. It's one of the films that we watched when we first started dating, and we seem to get to it every year.
Yeah.
And I bought her the Shout Select edition of the Blu-ray for Christmas, so we finally cracked that out. And then with Monday being a holiday, my daughter was in daycare, so I spent the whole day in the cinema. And when I say the whole day, it was like 2 films, so
Yeah.
it wasn't a lot. But I saw Licorice Pizza, which I've been waiting for a long time, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
good. And then I went to see Scream, which is just what you would expect Scream to be, which
Yeah.
was fine because that's what I wanted.
Is
So-
it Scream like 4 or 5?
It's technically 4, but it's just
5.
called
It's
Scream
5.
again. Oh, no, it is 5. You're right, yeah.
Okay.
But it's just called Scream.
Okay.
So,
See, I was confused when you asked if I wanted to go see it. I was like, yeah, I should watch the first one again because I thought it was just a rerun.
Yeah.
Well,
And then I realized later, I was like, oh, I don't need to see that yet.
it's actually called 5 Cream because you're supposed to
Fi-
write the S as a 5.
5 Cream. Wow. I'm really glad that didn't stick. That does not sound like the kind of film.
It's not a good film for a horror title for a horror movie.
No, it isn't. That's for sure. So, what about you, Brandon? What have you been watching?
Or Zach, what have you been watching? That's basically all I've been watching. Is I watched.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well,
Five came back. And...
Five Came Back I watched that when it first came out. I remember enjoying it. I've even got the book somewhere.
Yeah, same.
Because I had read an earlier book by Mark Harris, so I bought that just to have it. I never got around to reading it, and then they turned it into a documentary series. But I've been trying to catch up on 2021 movies that I missed when they were in theaters. So I did watch last weekend. I watched The Last Duel, which is now available to stream on HBO Max as of this recording. I really enjoyed that. But the movie that I really, really loved that I watched last weekend was The Card Counter, written and directed by Paul Schrader.
Interesting.
Oscar Isaac plays a sort of gambler with a dark past, and his past sort of comes back to haunt him. It's I don't know how familiar you guys are with Paul Schrader films. He has a
is this his most recent movie? Like this came out this past year?
This came out in 2021, and
okay.
Coming off the heels of a movie he did in 2017 called First Reformed, which I thought was spectacular, and he considers it to be like one of the few great movies he's made. So he's in his 70s now, and it seems like he's kind of in this like, every movie I make is going to be my last one, so I got to make it good kind of mode. Because back to back, I thought these movies were excellent.
First Reformed was one of the first movies that Lewis let me borrow when we first started working together. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure that like Multiple Maniacs was the very first one, right?
I think so.
And then a little while after, you let me borrow First Reformed.
I like to watch the uplifting films that I was watching.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very uplifting.
Yeah.
Well, and I also actually watched Bresson film Pickpocket, which a lot of Paul Schrader movies are sort of like very loose remakes of Pickpocket. He uses that like frame, the sort of framing of that story as like the sort of skeleton of a lot of his scripts, and so a lot of he's got like 4 or 5 movies that all end the same, basically end the same way, with the pickpocket scene where they recreate the ending of Pickpocket. And I actually think that this movie was one of the best ones that he's done of his pickpocket endings. So
that's awesome. I've hovered over Card Counter a few times, kind of trying to decide whether to watch it or not. But I'm definitely going to add it to the list. It's going to be hopefully the next one I watch, because you sounded like you did it justice. So
yeah, and it's short. It's like 90 minutes, or it's a little under 2 hours. But
did you say it was available on anything?
It is not. I rented it. So
okay, cool.
Yeah. There was, I can't believe it, you just talking about going back and watching films that you missed from last year. One of the best watches I've had so far this year, I know we're only like 3 or 4 weeks in, was the film Boiling Point, which I'd heard a lot about from some English podcasts that I listened to, starring Stephen Graham, who has had a lot of does a lot of character roles. He's got a part in The Irishman. He was in Rocketman, the Elton John biopic. And the thing that drew me to it was it's all a continuous shot.
Okay.
So it starts and it's like just one. And I was like, whenever there's like, I hate to call it a gimmick, I want to see how they do it.
Yeah.
So I sat down. I was not prepared for the emotional roller coaster that this film took me on. It is just flawlessly good.
Cool.
In my opinion,
I've never heard of it, so I'm adding it to my list. I love Stephen Graham. I first saw him in I think it was This Is England. When I was in college, I saw that, and he's like phenomenal in that movie. And I love that he's been getting roles in other things in the years since then. I guess even before then, I guess he's in Snatch, Gangs of New York.
Yeah, he's pretty. I think he's pretty highly regarded in the acting community, especially by like a lot of directors that I like hold in high esteem. You know, he pops up a lot, and he did really good work. There's a British crime drama called Line of Duty, which is just phenomenal, and he's in. I think it's the 4th season of that. Again, just blows it out of the water. You know, he's so great.
Cool.
But yeah, I can't believe I didn't add that. That it was so good. But it was like last Sunday, so
Yeah.
you know, we have slept
a million
since then.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to discuss Body Double, which is going to be today's film, we would like to thank everyone who's been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. It truly means the world to us both, and we love hearing from everyone. You can find us on all social media platforms at Film Church Radio, where you can leave us a comment or send us a message about the show or the film. If you liked it or not, that would be wonderful. And obviously, we'd also love you to rate and review the show on whatever podcast service you're streaming from. It just helps other people find the show and kind of interact with us as well, and hopefully keep growing and, you know, getting bigger and bigger, which is what we all want.
Exactly.
So let's do it. Let's go to Body Double.
All right. Now, everybody, there's going to be spoilers, obviously, always. And I meant to ask you this before we started the show.
Yeah.
Should we add like a do we want to summarize what this film is about for anybody that doesn't give an F about watching movies? They just love our voices and want to hear us talk about the movies.
Yeah, we can just do an IMDb style summary or premise, I guess, and just take it from there.
So before watching this movie, I watched Blowout, just like you did, right?
Yes.
And now I haven't seen. Well, I thought I hadn't seen a ton of Brian De Palma's films, but I guess I've seen. I mean, I've seen a few. I've seen the big ones, like I've seen Scarface.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Mission Impossible.
Yes, I always forget he did Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I do too. And then I was looking at it, and then there's probably a few more. But going into Blowout, I didn't really know what to expect. Yeah. But I really liked the movie a lot. Like I really liked it, and I really liked the ending and stuff. So then going into Body Double was also not sure what to expect. And I did like it's a fun movie. It's a really fun movie. The summary on IMDb is a young actor's obsession with spying on a beautiful woman who lives nearby leads to a baffling series of events with drastic consequences. And it's one of those movies where you don't. I'm really glad I went into it so cold and didn't read too much about it, because going into it, like, it starts off like a horror movie, with the opening credits and stuff, which are cool. And I like the title sequences. And then it just looks like this, old timey horror set, which it becomes once the shot pulls out. You actually see them making this movie. Yeah, and it's in a graveyard. The shot goes down, and you see a vampire buried underneath the ground. And then all of a sudden he wakes up, and his face is frozen. He tries to scream, but he can't scream. And then you just hear the director in the background say, "Okay, go, action. Yeah, do your thing." And he can't get out his scene because he's just frozen, terrified. The actor is. And that jump, when the guy jumps at the beginning, like, I jumped.
Me too.
I was not expecting that. And it's weird. Like, I actually watched this movie twice, and going into it, I was being so critical. Like, I noticed it. I was like, I think I'm just trying really hard, not necessarily trying hard not to like the movie, but I was really dissecting it, like really trying to find everything and be like, well, that wasn't good. Well, that wasn't good, But when I think about it, I really enjoyed the movie. Like, the movie got me, if that makes sense. Like, what the movie was supposed to do was be fun and entertaining, and all the mysterious stuff, because it is like a mystery film. I didn't figure it out beforehand. What I mean?
Neither did I.
It got me. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I think, part of how this podcast has changed how I view films at the moment is that I'm not trying to outsmart the narrative. I know that we talked about it on the Play Misty for Me episode, about kind of just like watching the film and not trying to be one step ahead. And that's what I've been trying to do. And I think for this film especially, it pays off. When that revelation comes, regardless how quickly he puts together those pieces, I was like, oh damn.
Yeah.
Oh damn. Like here we go. This is actually really good. This is a good premise for a film.
Yeah.
You know, this actually has come together really well.
Yeah. I read somewhere that it like the genre was categorized as erotic thriller. And I would definitely agree with that.
Very
but
erotic.
it also jumps around. Like that was one of the things I was being so critical of, was just the fact that some parts of it feel like it doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are still some parts where I'm like, what was that? But Zach, I know this wasn't your first time watching this film, but you had said you had been wanting to rewatch it. How was the rewatch, and what was like your experience watching it the first time, and why?
Well, it wasn't too long ago that I first saw this movie. 2020 and 2021 is kind of blended together, so it was at some point in one of those years that I watched it for the first time. And I think the Criterion Channel was streaming it as part of a series on neo-noir movies. And so I went into it like you, pretty blind. I didn't know anything about it. And other than that, it was a Brian De Palma film, and I was familiar with a few of his movies. I think I watched Blowout after I had already seen Blowout years ago. I think I rewatched it again the first time I saw this movie. But I kind of, especially not knowing the context of sort of the conditions of what led De Palma to make the movie, I really enjoyed it. I love movies about movie making, and I know that just strictly speaking isn't necessarily about that the whole film, but it does kind of play with like the artifice of movies, this idea that all of this, none of this is real, all of this is fake. The movie begins and ends with that kind of, the opening scene and the closing scene are both them, these people showing you how they make a movie, and so it's kind of I like that. I like stories and films that do stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like all the big directors at some point make a movie about making movies.
Yeah.
I mean, Tarantino's done it.
Yeah.
I'm sure Spielberg has done it.
Yeah.
I can't think of what, but I mean, it becomes a part of their lives, they're writing what they know.
Yeah.
They're trying to fit it into like how they can relate to these stories.
And I feel like, especially with De Palma, when you read like the trivia about Blowout and the trivia about this, it's an idea he had while shooting the film before. He was shooting Dressed to Kill, I think, and he was using a body double, and he was like, what would happen if, and then he made this, and then I think Blowout, he had the idea for this from the film prior to that as well. It's, it's very linear in terms of, especially I think the 80s period, how these films came to be. But yeah, I mean, I think both of these make a really good double bill.
Blowout and then Body Double.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good.
Agree.
Well, and yeah,
like,
they're both
twosome to pick.
They're both kind of proto remakes in a way. Blowout is De Palma doing Antonioni's Blow Up with sound instead of picture, and then this movie is like if Rear Window and Vertigo were each action figures, this is Brian De Palma smashing those action figures together.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some very obvious like on the nose nods to Hitchcock. I mean, he's a guy who's he's watching this apartment for a rich friend, and the rich friend gives him like a telescope to look through, and he's like, "Hey, this girl is down here masturbating every night. Check it out."
It did make me appreciate how well Jimmy Stewart's pervertedness is handled in Rear Window.
Yeah,
How it's
because
kind of, there's those people like, oh, I don't know why you waste your time looking out that window. Like,
Yeah.
you should, or whatever.
but it's like it's because in Rear Window you don't feel it's a little weird. Yeah,
Especially
but
with
you're
a married
not
couple.
like Jimmy Stewart. You're a creep. Whereas in
Yeah.
this movie, you're like, this guy is fucking creepy.
Yeah, this guy is the worst.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like the shots of him, looking at her,
Yeah.
where it's like the long lens. It looks just like something right out of Rear Window.
Yeah.
And then there's like when he starts following her,
Yeah.
it feels just like Jimmy Stewart following.
Kim Novak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Vertigo. The main character of this film, what's his name? Jake Scully. He has that beginning shot that I was talking about where he like freezes. He's in a coffin trying to play this scene of a vampire, and they established that he has claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Right. And so where like Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo has vertigo.
Yeah.
So like his claustrophobia is like his vertigo or his like kryptonite or whatever you want to call it in this film. So it keeps coming back.
There's even a scene early on, and it was the Hollywood Tower Hotel where he went to stay with a friend, and he's sleeping on the floor just after he kind of discovers his wife/girlfriend. Even that hotel looks like where Kim Novak's character lives in Vertigo.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I had to pause and look it up. I was like, is this the same place?
Yeah.
Because it's like the big white building. It goes into the corner where the door is, and it wasn't. But even that, I was like, this is so familiar. This territory is so like I feel like I know this film already.
So okay, I know you're a huge Hitchcock fan.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this guy has a Hitchcock tattoo.
Okay, I do. It is just my dad called it a squiggly line, so it's not like super.
It's
intricate.
the famous like silhouette
Yeah.
drawing that he has. But still, obviously you're a huge Hitchcock fan. As a huge Hitchcock fan, what like when someone does something like this, where they're just almost shot for shot remaking something from one of your favorite directors, do you enjoy that? Like, did you enjoy this, or are you just kind of like, figure your own thing out, dude?
I did enjoy it. I think that it's hard when you make. If Hitchcock had been 40 years later, erotic thrillers would have been his thing.
Yeah, that was my thought too, because I was like, okay, because at first I was being super hypercritical, like I said, but then I was like, well, if Hitchcock had been born in a different time or lived a little bit longer, like he probably would have made stuff like this.
Oh, yeah. Hitchcock,
he was just a little more restricted by the codes and stuff.
Al was a pervert.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Made some great films, but morally, not great.
Yeah. And that was the thing I was juggling with watching this movie. I was like, okay, is this just like we're expected as a viewer to indulge in some rich director's perversions? But then I was like, okay, if this was Hitchcock, I wouldn't care. Probably.
And I think that it's elevated enough away from Hitchcock. There's a lot of like similarities there, but I think, I don't see the same projection from De Palma onto the guy who plays Jake. Like he is not a nice guy. He's not a character you really root for. I didn't through the whole thing. I was like, oh my God, whereas, Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, you're like, I really want this guy to succeed.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, there was enough similarities for it not to be too distracting. And like I said, you can't really get away from Hitchcock. I don't feel like, especially at that point, he hadn't really been he was seen as like a popcorn director for a lot of his life. He never really got the credit he deserved as like the master of suspense until towards the end of his career when he started to die and he was like being reevaluated. And at this point, when you've got those new Hollywood people coming up, it's hard not to reference him.
Yeah.
They had grown up watching his films and being influenced.
Well,
by
yeah,
him,
and like
so-
everybody was referencing him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spielberg was, and for sure, and like, Yeah, it was weird because I don't know that much about De Palma, but it was weird. I was reading some about him today and realizing, oh, De Palma's never really been recognized. Like
Yeah,
he's never had that big Oscar thing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. That's a shame. I mean, if you do a shot-for-shot remake of one of my favorite movies and cast Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates, that I've got a problem with. But if you just use it to kind of like, as a jumping off point, that's cool. Well, you can do
Yeah.
that.
Um, yeah, exactly. That was that. Yeah, that was like what I had to ultimately realize, both with Blowout and Body Double, was at some point I just had to say, okay, this movie is just going to be whatever this movie is, and I just need to sit back and enjoy it and stop
Yeah,
being so critical of it, because it is a fun movie. Like, and
it is a fun
it does
movie.
its
Yeah,
own thing, and I don't need it to just be trying to find every little thing and dissect it like
yeah,
that necessarily. But it did get me. It was fun.
Yeah, and I mean, you were saying like De Palma's never had this sort of like big recognition or anything like that, and he's kind of an interesting director in the sense that like seems like a lot of his movies don't do well when they come out, either critically or commercially, but years later they find their audience.
Right.
I think that this one, there are exceptions to that. I think Scarface, as far as I know, was a big hit, and um, uh, I assume that Mission Impossible was when it came out. But
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
and whether or not you consider that a De Palma movie, he's directed it, but he seems to also have. There's movies that he directed, and then there's movies where he's a writer, director, producer. Those are the movies that he
Yeah.
considers to be his movies. But a lot of these movies seem to find their audience years later. I mean, I was just looking at somebody posting a list of their it's a lot of people are thinking it's 2022, so people are kind of looking back 10 years, 20 years, and that sort of thing. And I saw somebody post their list of their top films of 2002, and they had De Palma's Femme Fatale as their number one film of 2002.
Oh, wow.
Now, I haven't seen Femme Fatale, but it does seem like his movies that came out in the early 2000s are now finding their audience, just as this movie found its audience years later. So I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's ahead of his time, maybe, in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of filmmakers right now that kind of really revere him.
Yeah, I think
really.
I think that documentary about him that Noah Baumbach did was kind of what got me paying attention to him, really. I had seen some De Palma movies. I had seen Carrie, I had seen Scarface, but I don't think I was really looking at him as a director as a person of interest until I saw that documentary.
Yeah, see, I haven't. I mean, I know of him just basically from all the documentaries about Spielberg and Lucas and Coppola and Scorsese. He's always like the fifth person sitting with those guys, but like I've never watched, like, dove into his stuff, and I didn't know Noah Baumbach did a documentary on him. I'll have to look that up and check it out. That sounds really good.
Yeah, and I mean, he's kind of the one of the odd boys of that group of film brats, right? Because they've all gone on to make certain kind of movies and have these certain kind of reputations, and he has not. It seems like more of them have kind of played the Hollywood game, and he's kind of been someone who tries to make what he can when he can make it. I mean, he made he made an Iraq War movie, like, during the Iraq War, highly critical, redacted, highly critical of the United States Army, that caused an uproar, and congressmen were saying this movie should be banned and stuff like that. Not that it got and it didn't get a wide release in the United States. It didn't make any money, but it's a movie that I've seen people talking about lately, especially as, like, it's the last 20 years of foreign policy has been getting talked about more and more. So again, someone who is kind of ahead of his time and willing to go against what's smart from like a critical or economic standpoint to make something that'll have a lasting impact years later, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I do want to dive into more of his movies personally, just in the future, and I have a feeling that this film will be kind of seen more as something personal, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know, like something that kind of is more of an auteur thing, because he did write the screenplay for this and the story. There was another screenwriter too, Robert Averich. So they both wrote the screenplay together. He came up with the story, but just as a writer director, when a director writes something, they usually have a lot more of their
personality on it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it was like him putting a lot of his impulses into a movie, that particularly the stuff that people didn't seem to like violence and sex.
Yeah.
He was Scarface was like heavily criticized for its depictions of violence and stuff like that. And so this seems like a movie where he's just sort of like going all in on the things that people criticize him for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like being too Hitchcocky, being too violent, being too sexual.
Yeah.
And he's like, so what?
Here's Body Double.
Here's my middle finger in my lawn.
Exactly. Here's my middle finger in my lawn.
He was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Director for this film.
I was looking at the Razzies, and they seem to have a something against him. So
really,
he got nominated for Scarface too.
Yeah, see, that's weird. That is weird.
Yeah,
that's like, there's something off there. But yeah, I was looking up his awards, and I thought I should mention that, but I don't think it's necessarily relevant.
I have a feeling that somebody on the Razzie committee, maybe somebody that he bullied in high school or something like that.
Yeah. It's the personal vendetta. They're like, hey guys, isn't this film awful? And they're like, actually, it's great. It's terrible.
And I mean, I guess...
he didn't win. It was just a nomination.
Right, but this movie was also not hugely well received when it came out. So the Razzies do have a tendency to kind of follow that, the whims of what's the movie that everyone says is bad right now, and these are the movies that get nominated, for Razzies. Not that Razzies are a serious award in the first place, but and there's plenty of stinkers that get nominated for Razzies, but there's also great films that, again, are movies that, at the time of their release, people were kind of like not 100% on, either critically or commercially. So I think that has something to do with it. But
and I don't think any director that uses the split diopters as well as Brian De Palma should get nominated.
Right. I
love those so much, and he uses them all the time.
Yeah.
Where there's for anyone that doesn't know, it's like where there's a character in the foreground and then a character in the background, and they're both in focus. He did it a lot in Blowout, where there was like the owl, and then John Travolta was behind.
Mm-hmm.
I love that technique so much, and every time I see it, I'm like, hey, that's good. You obviously care enough to try and pull this off, I guess is what it is. But
it's just better storytelling within the medium of film. It's not like you're not just cheating by getting the shot of one thing and then getting the shot of the other. You're like, how can I utilize this medium to its full potential?
Yeah, exactly.
And there were a lot of cool shots like that. Like the shot that kind of stood out to me that I liked in this movie was when he's stalking her in the mall, and it's kind of zoomed in on her, and then he's like going up the stairs, and then it just zooms out, and then it just kind of stays with him for a while.
Yeah,
I like that shot a lot. I don't know why.
Yeah, that whole mall sequence was really well done. To say that it was 15 minutes of very little dialogue.
Yeah.
and
And
just
he's basically
kind of
just stalking this woman the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're rooting for him or anything like that. But
Yeah.
there's this underlying tension going on that just kind of carries you through this whole scene, and it's done really well.
I wrote like in my notes when I was watching that scene, just like, he's stealing her underwear? ? Are we supposed to like him at this point? Because I just like all the way through I was like, benefit of the doubt. Okay, like
he's trying to like
protect
make
her
sure she's from this crazy guy.
Yeah, that looks like, again on my notes I put, it looks like a mix between the witch from Drag Me to Hell and Danny Trejo. Like, just this very
That's
like, if I
very
saw that in the
accurate.
mall, I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, like,
Yeah,
are we
like when
supposed to like him?
when they're all stuck in the elevator and there's all those people and the elevator opens and that guy is standing there. I'm just like, how are people not just screaming in terror that this guy with his face is standing right in front of the elevator? Like,
He even does like a little growl as well, which I enjoyed. It's like, "Urgh."
I did the second time I watched it with subtitles on, and when the elevator closes, there's a girl that's like, "Did you see that guy?"
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's like so quiet. Like I only noticed because I had the subtitles on.
That's what everyone should be saying all the time when he is in
Did you
that.
see that guy?
Yeah.
You see that guy?
But yeah, that whole scene in the mall is where we get from like creepy to downright like perverted.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he is pretty much leaving condensation on that window of the shop to get that look at her changing the underwear. Like, it is ridiculous.
Yeah, and then the mall cop is just like, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "No."
Okay, go about your business.
Oh man. Another scene that I really ended up liking a lot was or not even, I don't know. It's just a scene that got me with the tension and stuff, is when she's in the house and
Yes.
the guy is in there, the Danny Trejo man.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to murder her with the phone cord.
Yes.
Which reminded me of Dial M for Murder, right? When she's like at the phone.
Oh, I didn't even make that connection. That's good. Yeah.
But then he fails to kill her with that way, and then
Has a nap.
Do what?
He has a nap.
He has a nap. He falls back, hits his head, has a nap for a couple seconds. Then she tries to call the police, and then he has this very long drill with this like 16-foot drill bit on it, or 16-inch, not foot.
Yeah.
But this huge drill bit on it. He starts to try to drill her in the back. And she's like, and she gets away. Yeah. And then he's like slowly coming towards her. And it gets pretty cheesy here, which I was like, at first.
Yeah.
Because he's like getting closer to her, and you see the cord behind him like slowly getting tighter. And then as he tries to go in on her, the cord unplugs, and then he can't kill her.
The 80s.
And then she tries to run away, and she trips on the bed.
I guess. Yeah.
She hits the corner of the bed and falls over. And then this whole time, the main character is trying to get in the house and save her. The dog attacks him, so he's like he's on the first floor getting attacked by a dog, and her and the murderer are on the top or on the second floor. And then he takes the drill, and the shot is like from behind this guy, and the drill is going between his legs, so it looks like a penis. And then he just freaking murders her.
Yeah.
And I did not expect that. Like that moment when because the movie hasn't been that violent yet, right?
No. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he just drills, like the shot shows you from the first floor.
Yeah.
And you see the drill come through the ceiling and just blood.
Yeah.
And he's on the first floor getting attacked by the dog, so he sees it too. And I was at that point in the movie, I was like, holy fucking shit, this movie is not going anywhere I thought it was going to go.
Yeah. You think that he's going to...
I think one of my biggest, the things that I'm most disappointed in this film is that he's not directly underneath the murder. So I was hoping that we were going to see the blood dripping onto his face or onto him.
Yeah.
Or even get on the dog. You know, the whole house is white. And I do love that. I do love the drill coming in from the top floor, or coming into like the ceiling, down from the
Yeah.
ceiling, and all the blood gushing out. I wish we got like stains on the white couch, stains on the dog, blood dripping onto his face. But I digress.
Yeah.
They didn't do that.
I did read that De Palma didn't mean for it to be phallic. That wasn't the point of the drill. It was so that he wanted the audience to buy the fact that it could go through her and also the floor. That's why that drill is so big.
Yeah.
So that you could tell, because if it
Well-
was just like a hand drill, that would never go, reach through. So it had to be
I just don't believe that.
this humongous.
I mean, like, you
industrial-
have the shot
Yeah.
of the back of his. Like, the shot is just of, like, basically from his knees to his butt, of the back of him, and it just goes in between his legs. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it couldn't be more obvious than that.
Well, it could.
Like, for a director that is, like, doing these cool shots,
Yeah.
like you said, what was the shot that you called it? The shot of, like, the foreground and background.
The split diopter.
Yeah, like for a guy who's doing shots like that and planning shots out, to like have this shot of the drill going between his legs and be like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that." Like, I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
Well, it's possible that when he decided to use a drill as a weapon, he wasn't thinking that way. But once on set,
Yeah,
realizing
It was
the
like,
potential of the
well,
drill, I don't know.
Yeah. Let's just get one shot of the drill being like a penis.
But
Just see how it
you know,
works.
I mean, weapons are sort of inherently phallic. Anything,
Yeah.
you know, a bullet
Yeah.
is technically phallic. Not very, you know, it's very
Yeah.
small, but you know, you know, a weapon is something that penetrates a person. It's sort of like
Yeah.
you can't escape the phallic imagery of it.
I guess that's true.
That 15 minutes of that murder really kind of like sold the film though. I was
Yeah.
like, I wrote down, I was like, this is an intense 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Like from the moment he's watching, he sees like he tries to call her, and that doesn't even go the way you think it's gonna go. Like he's behind, and then he grabs her. To him, like running like into the house. It's an insane 15 minutes, and it's really well done. It's really
Yeah.
great. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Like this
Yeah.
did not go where I was going to think it was gonna go. It did. You did what you wanted to really well. Apart from, I don't know, he doesn't take the loot with him.
he doesn't take the what?
The Danny Trejo. He's like at one point he's getting something out the safe.
Oh yeah,
Then
he
he just
doesn't take
leaves.
the jewelry.
Yeah. But I know that wasn't the point. He wasn't stealing the jewelry, like at the end of the film. But then I was like, what was the point of like him creeping around?
Yeah, because at first you don't know who the murderer,
Yeah.
who that guy is. But see, this scene that you're like, and it kind of sold it for me too. But this scene doesn't even happen till you're about
Yeah, now
you're over you're
Yeah.
over halfway in.
Mhm.
And there's already been a bunch of scenes to kind of like make you want to doubt the film.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the big scene that I was just like, oh, okay, this is really stupid, was the scene where he's chasing after the guy. This guy steals her purse. Like he's stalking her because he sees this Danny Trejo. Sorry, we keep calling him Danny Trejo.
He's
We
the
don't know
Indian, is
what
what
else to
he's
call him.
referred to as. in
That's what
the
he's
Yeah.
called in the movie, but it's so. I just hate that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, why are you calling him that? Please stop.
So
but
we can call him the killer,
the killer.
Yeah.
the driller.
So
killer.
the killer is stalking this woman, and the hero is stalking this woman.
Right.
But the hero is stalking her because he sees the killer stalking her. So he's like, trying to air quotes protect her.
Yeah.
And in that moment where he sees the killer sneaking up behind these changing rooms on the beach, and the hero comes up to her, and she turns around. Like, I mean, he says the line that I, of course, was thinking in my head, like, "Hey, someone's stalking you,"
Yeah.
and it's me.
Duh. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, he says that, and
Yeah.
she's like, he's like, "But it's not me." And then, anyway, so the point is, the killer steals her purse. He chases after her. Then they go into a tunnel. He has this, claustrophobia
Yeah.
again. The killer steals her key card. Then she runs up, and she helps him out of the tunnel. And then they start trying to have a conversation. They don't even really have a conversation. It's so
You saved my purse.
yeah, it's such a short conversation, and she's like, "Who are you? Did my husband hire you?" And he's like, "No, I'm and then they start making out.
Yeah.
And it is so out of left field. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And then they do the shot from Vertigo where it's just circling around them while they're making out, but it's so over the top. Like he's kissing her neck, he's groping her boobs. Like her at one point, her boob just flies out. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like this would never happen in real life. Like this woman's just been traumatized.
Because at the time I was like, okay, maybe like she's just a very highly sexual person. We have seen, in air quotes, her dancing erotically in her room. But then at the end you find out that that wasn't her.
Yeah.
So why is she kissing this guy?
And you know, when you say that's something that wouldn't happen in real life, I think that's like one of the things I like about this movie is it feels very artificial. And I feel it seems to me that the movie is setting itself up that way. And I don't particularly care to go into like artistic intent, but my read of it, especially with regards to like the responses that De Palma was getting to previous films in the 80s, and still today you have these discussions of how much does media affect people in real life? Is violence in film? Is sex in film? Is this contribute to a negative culture? Does violence against women in film contribute to violence against women in real life? And I think De Palma is the sort of person who would say, no, it's just a movie. It's all fake. And so I think that's kind of what the opening of the movie does. And I think that like the rest of the film really does. There's kind of always constant reminders that you're watching a movie, that this isn't something that would happen in real life. There's a scene where he's driving at the beginning that had, I don't know if it was rear projection, but it certainly looked, when he's driving home to his apartment, looked like rear projection. I
love that shot.
Halfway through the movie, again, the sort of dramatic music feels like something straight out of the 50s. Doesn't feel like the kind of maudlin music that you would hear in an 80s film. That sort of theme that is associated with her. Halfway through the movie, there's in the shooting of the porno where you see the camera crew. It's the camera crew that's shooting the porno, but it's also literally the camera crew filming the movie that you're watching through the mirror. There's kind of always constant reminders that this isn't real and has no real life consequences.
Well, too, going back to Hitchcock, it's like the movies of the 40s and 50s, like all the romance in those films is not realistic either. Right. It's like the women are just head over heels for every man, and every man is just, cool.
And romances happen in old movies like over the course of like a weekend.
Yeah. Because this is following. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I was just gonna say, so we need these two characters to do this, and so if we're gonna speed it up, then we're gonna speed it up.
Yeah,
none of it is realistic.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that Vertigo? The point of Vertigo is not that he's been set up by this old college buddy. It's the fact that he has got this infatuation with this girl, where this is the opposite. I feel like the point is he's been set up by this guy, not that he has this sexual connection with this woman. Mm-hmm. That's kind of secondary. That's just that just like drives the story forward. Is like he needs to, like, there needs to be a connection between those two that isn't him watching her through a window for this story to kind of be believable, I guess. Yeah. So when we get to that point, it's like, okay, you can tell that that he's like now in love with her or whatever, but that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, and two, going back to like the thing that you were saying, Zach, about, that it's supposed to be a movie. It's supposed to be, heightened and just kind of a fantasy anyway.
Yeah.
It's like thinking about his contemporaries like Spielberg and Lucas, and especially those two. It's like, their films are not, you don't watch Spielberg and Lucas and go, yeah, that would definitely happen in real life. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, Indiana Jones is, you know, all the people's faces get melted off in the end by a spiritual, you know, some entity.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I
You
mean,
buy it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so, you know, you have to suspend your disbelief with a lot of these
Yeah.
movies anyway. And at a point in this movie, I had to just be like, okay, it's just a movie. I need to suspend my disbelief and try to enjoy it. But that scene just, you know,
It
when they're-
jars.
yeah, when they're making out, I was just like, this is what is going on.
Yeah.
And then the murder scene happens after that, and that's when I really was like, okay,
Okay.
that's better.
Yeah. So then
But
after the murder scene, it goes to a point that I never thought that it would go to, which is the porn industry.
Yeah, the first half of this movie and this does not in any way prepare you for the second half of the movie.
yeah.
It's incredible that quick switch is like he's depressed, he's watching, I guess, an advert for a porn off like a porn film, and then the next minute he's in the said porn film.
Yeah. He's being cast in the porn film, acting in the porn film.
Yeah. Which it did make me laugh because especially when he got fired like earlier on in the film, I was like, of course they would fire him. He's awful. He can't act. Even at the acting class, he's terrible.
Yeah.
And then when he got a job in porn, I was like, makes sense. I buy it.
Yeah.
Like he would go to do porn. Of course he would.
Yeah.
Like with that acting skill.
Yeah, we haven't really discussed. I think that this movie has very big, what I would call divorced guy energy. I actually did this both times that I saw this because I have a tendency to forget things. I remember I did this when I watched it the other night, and I did this. I'm pretty sure I did the same thing the first time I watched it a year ago, 2 years ago. After finishing the movie, I said, did Brian De Palma make this like right after a divorce? And sure enough, he got divorced in 1983. So
Ah,
there we go. Yes,
there it
he
is.
and all his friends were getting divorced in the early 80s.
Yeah. And of course the female, the person he's either married to or is dating, in her 30 seconds of screen time, she is like loathsome.
Oh yeah.
She makes eye contact and like smiles and she's like, yep, you found me.
It's the film debut of Barbara Crampton, who's became a scream queen after this.
Oh wow, okay.
She was in a lot of like 80s horror movies, and she's still around. She still acts.
That's
but that was
awesome.
her feature film debut. But yeah, and I mean I wonder how much of this is like the stuff that a guy who's sort of just been kicked out of his house and, you know,
Yeah.
his girls kicked him out. These are the things that this guy indulges in, you know, was Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate about personal lives, but, you know, I definitely think that it comes off in the movie enough to make me think, I wonder if he just got divorced before he made this movie.
Yeah. That whole porn sequence though, when
Yes.
they're actually shooting
Yeah.
the scene and he's walking through
Dressed as a nerd.
dressed as a
Right.
nerd, walking through this crowd of this you know, crazy sex party.
Mm-hmm.
That was that was great. Like that, I don't know,
Yeah.
like all the costumes
And the
are
soundtrack
freaking
and-
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, the soundtrack, everything was just like that. It you know,
It
it's like
worked.
it comes at an interesting point because it's like we were saying, the murder happens and then you get kind of sold and then it turns into a totally different movie and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like a palate cleanser from the murder because it's like
yeah.
here's a music video, a porno
yeah,
Yeah.
music video or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know, set to Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which was like that was a new song when this came out. I think that song came out in '83, so that's like a very finger to the pulse kind of moment
Yeah.
of for the
Yep.
movie.
yeah.
That is the scene that I remember the most from.
Yeah, I love the set design and the costumes in that
Yeah.
whole scene. and all of it afterwards, because like Holly herself, like her haircut, her look, everything is just
Yeah.
like so 80s and so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and Jake instantly makes one porno and turns into a sleaze bag. He has like his hair slicked back, and he's wearing like a very open shirt, and he's like, "Hey, baby," you know. And it's like, what is happening now? Like, where are we going? You know,
Yeah.
it's so like chalk and cheese. It's so different to what we've been exposed to so far.
Yeah.
Well, and he's like constantly acting, right? When he's not
Yeah.
working, because that is an act of him pretending to be a porno producer to get her to try and find out information from her. And in the final, the sort of the climax of the movie, when he's stuck he's experiencing his claustrophobia in the grave, he treats it like he has to act. You know, he kind of goes in.
He has to act his way out of the grave.
Yeah, you know, he has this.
Yeah.
He goes back to the opening scene, but he's in his clothes that he's wearing, covered in dirt, and says he's gonna tells off the director and says he's gonna do it again and get it right this time. And it's a very fantastical. You know, it's obviously sort of not a literal scene, but
I did really like that scene. Like, I appreciated it a lot. Like it tied the movie together for me, and it I don't know. It may be one of the only moments where you actually do like the character, because you're like, you want him to get out of that situation. You want him to get over this claustrophobia. You want him, and he has to fight it himself.
Yeah.
Like, he can't do it without anyone's help or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I just the other day rewatched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I showed it to my parents because they had never seen it. And so now then like the next day rewatching Body Double, I kept thinking of the line, "That is the best acting I have ever seen in my whole life." It was like that was like the thing that I thought of when he's in the dirt and he needs to act his way out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it ends a little abruptly. Like, okay, so the dog jumps on him, and so
Whoa. Back up. The dog headbutts the glass.
Oh yeah. Like, okay, you've got to really think of this movie as just like, a science fiction or something. Like, it's not. It's very fantastical. The dog headbutts the glass of the car and get out. And gets out, and
I had to rewind that shot 3 times. I was like, there is no way they caught this on camera. And I was like, they did. This dog headbutted the glass.
Couldn't have been done in post.
No.
That wasn't CGI. They had to. I mean, they could have put in. I mean, it probably wasn't real glass. Obviously, it was some kind of movie glass, and they had maybe had some kind of explosive to make it crack.
But still.
And they were just holding a stake right outside the window. But okay, so the dog breaks out, and then it jumps on the villain, and they fall into the water, and then he's just gone. I was like, he's like, usually movies he comes back. Like, you don't actually see him explode or a knife go through him or him just laying there dead. Like, even if they do, they still come back sometimes.
Yeah,
so
that's
like.
true.
I thought that the ending was very, very, very Hitchcockian. Somebody falls down.
Yeah, the big set piece.
And then the movie's over.
Yep.
It felt like everybody lost their mind in that last 2 minutes.
Yes.
Like, everybody acted so out of character. Like, just instantly. Like, everyone just flicked the switch. That ending was so bizarre. There was a lot of times I was baffled in this film.
Yeah, definitely. Because it just, like I was saying before, it kind of jumps all over the place. It kind of feels like it doesn't know what it is. But I think it did. Like, it did know what it was. It just, it's mixing genres. And it's just a fun movie. Like, it's just a movie that you kind of just have to sit back and relax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nice.
Go through it. But yeah, I mean, if any of our listeners are recently divorced, just to get together with your pals and
Yeah.
watch this movie.
Recently divorced guys. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. I don't know if divorced women are going to sit around and watch this.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, its portrayal of women isn't great.
No.
And that's a De Palma sort of
Trope.
yeah.
Yeah, like Body Double. I mean, not Body Double, but Blowout was also the
Yeah.
same way. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's
the women are there to be sexualized or killed.
yeah.
But you also have these kind of interesting. I really like the scene where Holly outlines what she does not do when she's like, okay, I'm making a porn, but here's my list of limits. This is I don't do this, and this, and I get paid $2,000 a day, and there got to be a contract. And there's kind of like this, I don't know. There's this interesting element of there's your strong female character.
Yeah,
but
she definitely was a strong female character. But she's just she's a porn star. Like there's like, I mean, which there's nothing wrong with being a porn star, but it's still, I did have that thought. I was like, is this a good portrayal of a woman? I don't know, but it's not necessarily for me to decide. But she definitely was the standout actor in this movie, as far as like someone who can really act and acts well. She was really good. I didn't know that she was Tippi Hedren's daughter until after I watched the movie and was looking up the actors. Which is straight back to Hitchcock. Tippi Hedren was the female lead in The Birds.
And Marnie.
Oh, and Marnie. Yeah, I forgot about that. And Melanie Griffith, who plays Holly, she's really good in this movie.
She is. I think that when she comes on, I mean, the first time we're introduced to her, she's dancing, and there's. I was worried that was going to be her character, was just going to be a porn actress.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to her. I mean, like when they're they meet one of his old friends when they're leaving the restaurant, and like that was really funny.
Oh
Their
yeah,
interaction, like the way that she handled that was great. And then like when she's in the street shouting at the cars, it wasn't too much. It was kind of just enough, you kind of you still sympathized with her.
Yeah, and it shows her as like a strong, independent woman.
Yeah.
Who can handle herself.
Yeah. Unless she comes up against Danny Trejo.
Yeah, exactly. Gets hit over the back of the head with a crowbar.
In front of all the police.
Exactly.
Like, what the?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, hey, he's killing her. And everyone's like, hey, get back in the car.
Yeah.
Did anyone see the similarities between the film they were filming at the end of Body Double, and the film they were mixing in Blowout? It was a very similar, like a kind of dorm room.
What is the film they're making in Blowout? It's like a slash.
Right? They're just they're just trying to get the scream right for the soundtrack, but just the way that it was like
it is in a shower.
Yeah, but I was like, this is very similar, like the layouts and stuff like that. It wouldn't have been the same film,
no,
but I did enjoy that kind of similarity.
Shower scenes are big in horror films, man.
Yeah, especially when you
De Palma likes the shower. I mean, the opening scene of Carrie is all of the girls in the shower.
Oh
right?
yeah. I have seen Carrie too, and I forgot about him directing that.
I'd have to look back at his history of showers. I don't know how. I don't know if that's
there's a whole thesis there somewhere.
Yeah.
Brian De Palma in the shower.
Well, and another thing you can do is go back and watch this and check to see if you can see the mistletoe butt tattoo in the early dancing scenes that.
Oh yeah, that's very true.
Melanie Griffith's character has that is brought to our attention late in the film, very very consciously. I assume that if you went back and watched the first dance, you'd be able to catch a glimpse of it without noticing it. That it's her and not.
Got to get that 4K Blu-ray.
I guess so.
That's right. Any excuse at this point. I'm like, I need to see it. I need to see if she's got a tattoo.
If not, I'm gonna email Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
You
Hey,
messed
there's an
up.
inconsistency.
So Tatum O'Neal, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Carrie Fisher all auditioned for the role of Holly, but turned it down. Brooke Shields was offered the role, but turned it down in order to study French literature at Princeton. Linda Hamilton turned down the role in order to prepare for her role in The Terminator 1984.
Wow.
Kurt Russell was also considered for the role. The name of the low-budget horror film that Scully was appearing in was Vampire's Kiss. In real life, a film with that title, Vampire's Kiss 1988, starring Nicolas Cage, was made and released about 4 years after Body Double. Now, if this movie had starred Nicolas Cage and Carrie Fisher,
Yeah.
everybody would be talking about it all the time.
I think where it really falls down is the actor, I forget his name.
Craig
Who
Wasson.
plays, that's it, who plays Jake. Oh, I did
see,
not
I was watching
enjoy
this-
his performance at all.
I was watching this thing about his acting in this movie, and somebody was talking about how like he's supposed to be playing a bad actor in the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, I bought it.
And then and then in parts of the movie his acting gets better. I guess like when he's in the the porn scenes and stuff and and trying to act better, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't mind him too much. Like, I mean, he's not supposed to be likable.
Yeah.
Like honestly, he actually reminded me a lot of David Duchovny, who is a better actor, but I don't know why. Like the way he
okay.
talked and
Yeah, that's
looked and
interesting.
stuff.
Yeah.
I liked him in this film.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's him and not someone more famous, because I think it benefits the film. I think that the star of the movie playing an actor who's not a very good actor, but who also is never going to be, this character is never going to be a star. And I think that if you had a star, whether it's Kurt Russell, Nicolas Cage, I think it would take something away from this movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
I think so,
agreed.
because
Yeah.
it's
You can't watch this film with any preconceptions about who this person is.
No, and you wouldn't
Like,
know
he's-
who he was unless you saw Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Which I have.
So have I, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm glad to say I don't
remember
remember him in it.
I don't remember him in it either. It does help that he's kind of
Yeah.
he's kind of a nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that everybody else does a really good job around him. Like all the other actors in the film do really
Yeah, I
well.
love Dennis
But I do
Franz.
wanna-
As the
Yes.
director.
Yes, that's who I was going to shout out, because I just, every time he shows up, he's like...
which one is that?
He does so the director of the film.
Oh, yeah, he played the photographer, right?
Yeah.
In Blowout.
Yeah, he just plays not only like the sleazy, like up to no good guy,
Uh-huh.
I guess, very well, but every time he's on screen, he's just doing a stellar job.
Yeah.
Like he's really great. And yeah, he stands out a lot.
A consummate actor. I like him.
Yes, agreed. Anyone else got anything they want to add about Body Double?
I mean, we could talk about kind of 1984 in general, like why this as a year for film. I mean,
What was the year like, Zach? Tell us.
well, I don't know.
Share us your knowledge.
Well, that
We weren't there, weren't you?
No, I
I'm just
wasn't there.
kidding.
But speaking of divorce guy energy, I think it's the same year that Temple of Doom came out, and a lot of people said that was darker than its predecessor, because Lucas had also just Brian's good friend George had also just gotten divorced.
Yeah.
That
And Spielberg was finding his wife, apparently.
yeah.
In that movie.
I mean, like, I'm looking at the and maybe it's like a Reagan thing. Um, I'm looking at like the top 10 box office films from 1984, and you've got Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Temple of Doom, Gremlins, Karate Kid, Police Academy, Footloose,
Wow.
Romancing the Stone, The Search for Spock, and Splash. And barring that a couple of those movies are dark-ish, like Temple of Doom and Gremlins are the reason we have PG-13. I wonder if they're, I mean, to me, that's like 10 fairly light movies. Like those are mostly
Family-friendly.
family-ish films. They're all fun, even the dark ones. And so that might be some kind of indication that like the culture was not at a point where body double was what it was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, see, I had this feeling after watching this movie the second time that I was like, this is a fun movie. I was like, if it wasn't for like the sex and the the nudity and the violence and stuff, I would sit down and watch this with my family on Christmas.
Yeah.
This is a movie.
This
is a movie that I would actually recommend to my like parents, but I wouldn't watch it with them. I think my parents would like this movie, or they would have liked it if they'd seen it in 1984. But I wouldn't watch it with them. But no, this is a fun movie. But it, like you say, it has all these. Like De Palma wanted to make an X-rated movie. And
I'm sure I read somewhere that he wanted it to show real sex. He didn't want
he didn't want simulated sex.
Yeah, and the studio were like, "You've got to be kidding me."
I mean, I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Well, they reference Last Tango in Paris in this movie, which is a movie that has real sex in it, right? I haven't seen it, but
yes,
problematic
sex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think maybe the country just wasn't ready for this.
Yeah,
at the time.
I mean, it's very possible.
Amadeus was.
It's not quite. Yes, sorry, Zach. It's not quite arty enough
Right.
to kind of be in the art house like run, and it's not quite. I don't know. Like
it's like a adult family adventure.
Yeah, it's not quite enough. You can't imagine it getting a big release in the multiplexes.
It's a 42nd Street movie that.
Yes.
But 42nd Street doesn't exist anymore. The in that context. So today it's an art house movie. Yeah. Today this would maybe be nominated for something. Somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just the world wasn't ready for it.
It's kind of a good time for this movie to kind of make a resurgence because everybody is so in love with the 80s now.
Yeah.
It's like 20 years ago, even myself, I was like, everything from the 80s is dumb.
Yeah.
And it looked like I just was, nobody was into that style, and now it's like all that's coming back. Like everything from the 80s is super cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's only a matter of time before somebody just kind of takes the Frankie Goes to Hollywood sequence from the movie, the relaxed music video, whatever, and somebody's gonna tweet out, like, what is this? And it's gonna go viral. That's all it takes for a movie like this to kind of get a second life from people who've never heard of it. Or
all right, well, I will cut that sequence out and we will tweet it on Film Church Radio.
That's right. Here we go.
Let's go viral. Let's get it. All right, well, I think I'm all talked out on this movie.
Yeah.
I think there's other things we could touch on, but I don't think anything would add to it. It's just little lines or little bits that, stood out. The one last thing I do want to say is that the detective that is on the case, so to speak, is just like, he just sums it up so perfectly. When Jake calls him towards the end, like, she's being murdered, and he's like, Scully, oh yeah, Hollywood's busiest sex offender.
Oh yeah, I mean, he tells us straight out. He says, like, you're a peeper. That makes you a pervert and a sex offender.
It was great to have a police officer that is, I don't know, like, just realistic in these kind of films. Not like, you're going to help us. It's more like, no, you're the problem.
Yeah.
You're the reason this happened.
I like when he says, "I know who killed her." Is that a confession?
Yeah. Oh, dear. Well, Brandon,
Y'all ready to find out what we're watching next week?
I'm passing it over to you, dude. So tell us, what are we going to watch next week?
So, next up is a film called Wander Darkly from 2020, going way in the future now,
Okay.
or the present. The most recent film that we've watched since Spider-Man. But yeah, it's called Wander Darkly. It was written and directed by Tara Mealy and stars Sienna Miller and Diego Luna,
Sweet.
who you
Okay.
might know from Rogue One. And yeah, I've been wanting to watch this film for a while. And the director, I got to talk to her while I was at Sundance 2 years ago.
Sweet.
Got to flex that muscle every once in a while.
Yeah.
But she was a really, really cool person to talk to. She had a lot of really nice, encouraging words for me. And so, yeah, I've been wanting to watch this for a hot minute and haven't had the chance. So I'm excited to watch it and talk about it.
Good
And I'll talk a
choice.
little more about her next week. But
Awesome.
so, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to keep up with us, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. It is on Hulu. Again, it's called Wander Darkly. Yeah, it's on Hulu right now. So check it out.
Perfect. Yeah, please watch along with us and, take this as kind of like a curated viewing experience. Because that's what we want to do. We want to talk about these films together, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the show. You can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio, and you can follow us individually on Letterboxd at Selman Scope for Brandon and at Walker Lewis 3007 for me. You can keep up with what we've been watching on there. We also have all our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. So, like I said at the top of the show, please leave us a rating and a review so we know if you like the film, if you didn't, and what you would pick for us to watch in the future. Zach, thank you again for joining us. It's always a pleasure when you join and pass your knowledge to us. I absolutely love it.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. From another time zone, we managed to make it work. So
yeah, here we are. Yeah.
I totally forgot about the time zones too, so I'm glad you did the math on that.
Oh, it's only an hour. I'm an hour ahead of you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Brendan, do you have Holly Does Hollywood
Yeah, I do. It's in the adult section. Follow me.
on VHS?
Yeah, VHS, whatever you want. 1/2 inch, 3/4, beta. Got it all.
That's good to know.
See, now you can just stream it.
That's right.
I'm not paying for that.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
And cut.